right, everybody, welcome. We are glad you're here. I'm Ray Johnston, and we have a whole bunch of folks here. And we're just glad you tuned in. This is the largest one of these we've ever done. The topic we are going after is basically reopening the American church. 10 questions everybody should be asking to stay ahead of this thing. And this is going to be, I just want to warn you, this will be like taking a drink from a fire hose. Okay? If you have something to capture what's on the screen. And we have some guests today, and we will get to some of those folks later. But let's see. Andrew McCord, are you there? Well, that didn't take long. Kurt Harlow, are you there?
Yes, I certainly am here.
Good. Would you open us in prayer?
Lord, wherever Andrew is, I pray he would not remain lost during this time. And Father, we thank you so much for this gathering of leaders. Lord, let every idea expressed here lead to the furthering of your kingdom, especially in this complicated time. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And one kind of personal note, and then we'll dive into this whole thing, is this. This same time every week thing has started feeling like a family. Okay. And so we have a chat string. So if you go down, turn that on, you can share anything you want. You can say anything you want. You can say hi to people, or you can share any prayer requests you want. And we will take that seriously and have your back. If you have questions or suggestions, you can also put it on there. But this is pretty cool. It's starting to feel like a Wednesday 1 o'clock family. And so glad you're on with us. And Mark Clark is here today from Canada. Lauri Harris is here. She runs a nationwide organization. And then, John, we also have a special guest we're going to kick this off with.
That's right. Andrew Stanley is with us. If you've been to our Thrive conferences over the last year, he joined us, an incredible guy, comedian, and he's from Atlanta, Georgia. And we're going to just ask him a few questions here. We have a video of his stand-up comedy. We're going to show at the very end of this. Very funny guy. But welcome, Andrew. And opening question, and how is quarantine going for you?
Hey, John. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I wish we were all at conference right now, but this is great. This is such great participation. Quarantine is very weird for me. I'm used to traveling around and being on stage, and like many of you, used to being on stage and not doing any of that. Right now, I'm actually quarantined at my parents' house and have been here for about a month. I rent a place in Atlanta with several roommates, and we all share one bathroom. So I decided to head back up to my parents where I could have my own bathroom. And my mom's been cooking and doing laundry. So this feels kind of like a vacation. But I'm starting to wonder if I should have stayed a budget analyst a little while longer instead of jumping into full-time comedy. But it's been so far so good. We got my sister married right just in time. We had to do a family-only wedding for her, and since this is wedding season, I know a lot of people are having to move their weddings, but I noticed that Christians were just like, nope, you know what? We have been waiting. We are not waiting anymore. We are getting married. It is, just because me and Mom might have to abstain, we can't anymore. So all the Christians are doing these real small secret weddings, which is fun, but just weird times.
Wow. So, hey, what are comedians doing during this time?
Yeah, I've been talking to all my friends, and we're like, what are you doing? I don't know. I'm trying to write, but it's hard to write about anything other than this. And I feel like when this is over, that people are going to be tired of it so fast. So we've been doing some virtual comedy shows, which have been really fun. And I've been doing that for some organizations where I'm kind of live hosting and then showing clips of some of my favorite stand-up comedians actually in front of live audiences. So pre-recorded clips, but live hosting. So we've been doing some fundraisers and stuff like that, and trying to take advantage of this virtual world right now where it's easier to capture more people in a lot of cases, but we're learning as we go, and it's been kind of fun to try to figure it out.
Awesome. Now you're in Georgia. Is it true that they're starting to reopen everything?
Oh yeah, we're the guinea pigs right now. I think this week we opened up the hair salons and some restaurants and bowling alleys and tattoo parlors. I don't know if you can see my awful facial hair on here. This is a protest beard I'm growing, and I'm not shaving until every state can go bowling. So we're the first ones here in Georgia, though. So you guys can watch us and then make your decisions based on what happens, I guess.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us. We're going to roll your comedy bit at the end of this call, so hang on to the very end, and back over to you, Ray.
Andrew, thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, somebody told me you were on a call the other day and your father and grandfather were walking through.
Yeah, I've been on Zoom calls just like everybody else, and I was on one meeting for a church fundraiser I was gonna do an online show for, and I didn't know this. My granddad came over, so my dad and my granddad are walking around in the back, and they're just like, "Is that?" They're like, "See if they'll do it." I'm like, "They're not gonna do it," but it is fun being here.
I love your dry sense of humor, man. Glad you're with us today. So it'll be fun to see it at the end. What I'm going to do is this. I am going to give you an overview of, sort of A to Z, what people need to think about in terms of reopening. And a couple comments on this. And the first one is this. Right now, for the last few weeks, we've been saying long range planning around here feels like it's about, long range planning feels like it's about 3 weeks. In the last few days, it has felt like it's about 30 minutes, okay? In other words, what's okay, what isn't okay. I mean, we had a couple of Christian leaders in Sacramento release a thing calling the church to reopen and wanting everybody in full services packed in about 2.5 to 3 months. I looked at that and I went, I think there are a ton of people that are going, there's no way I'm walking into a room of 2,000 people that soon, or 300 if I'm sitting right next to them. So, and the other thing is this, everybody's been going to webinars on this subject or reading on this subject, and they're usually single issue webinars. And so I studied I'm not preaching at Bayside these days. We have other people that are much better at that than doing that. So what I've been doing is going, can we develop something that every business person could use, every pastor could use, where they're going, good, I don't have to invent the wheel. I just have got everything in 10 questions, which means from A to Z, we now have confidence we know what we're doing. Because what's going on is right now, somebody listens to a webinar and the whole thing becomes about that webinar, and they listen to another webinar and they shift to that one and then back to the first one. And pretty soon their staff and board are praying they don't listen to another webinar. So what we're trying to do is come up with 10 questions that everything fits into. And the other thing is this, in 24 hours, we will have an operational website. Lauri Harris, are you happy about this? We will have a operational website with each one of these questions and a ton of resources that we are going to continue to add to. For example, how do you get supplies to keep the church clean in an age where nobody can get supplies? So all of that kind of stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the 10 questions, some of the stuff underneath it, and then do an interview with Mark and Lauri about the first 3 questions. Okay. And, but kind of basically what I would do is give you an overview of this. There's 10 critical questions if I want to go from A to Z of what do we need to think about in terms of relaunching, okay? I actually like this phrase, behold, I'm making all things new, Revelation 21:5, because that does a great job of underlying what's going on with this whole thing. I think God is up to something new in the Christian church, okay? And if we go to the next slide, here's my favorite phrase of everything I've read. God can use crisis to accelerate ministry impact. Okay, we just had Rick Warren on a call a few minutes ago, and Rick had a great phrase. Here, if you want a good phrase to repeat to your church in your sermon this weekend, here it is, okay? Bad times in the world can be great times in the church. That was true in Acts, that has been true throughout history, and I think God is using this. God can use crisis to accelerate ministry impact. The future church is arriving faster than anyone expected, and frankly, thank God for that. Starting now, Sunday-focused churches will become everyday-focused churches because people need to live out their faith every single day. Can anybody give an amen to that? Okay, and go to the next slide. Here are some sort of facts of life right now. Number one is this: ministry will not be conducted in the same manner as before. That just needs to be a given. Now, there's some people overreacting to that by saying people will never gather again in large groups. And I would disagree with that, because at some point Disneyland is going to be packed, and so will your church. Okay. However, we have the opportunity to make some changes so that we're operating much, much better and more efficiently and much broader than we're before. Second is this: a return to public gatherings will and should be staged. We'll talk about the staging of that later. And we've been looking at all kinds of options for staging, and I'm going to ask Kurt and Andrew some questions, because they've been talking about some very creative ways for people could return and feel safe. Third is this: government guidelines will be different from one state to the next and one city to the next. Somebody told me the other day, hey, El Dorado Hills just opened. Georgia is open and California is shut down. Churches are being told, matter of fact, there's a raging debate right now. Okay, like we had a church in our area that wanted to do a drive-in service, and they would not let the church do that.
Hey, I was sorry, I was on my tractor, I was mowing. Oh, you're making me jump.
All right, it sounds like we got that solved. Welcome to the future church. We had a church meet, they wanted to meet, had a drive-in, okay? And that was shut down, and they've been told they can't do that. Well, far more people are in Costco's parking lot every day. And the answer to that is, well, Costco's essential and the church isn't, okay? And so at some point, we have people battling that on one side. On the other side, we have pastors like me. I heard Chris Brown say the same thing a couple of weeks ago. We're pastors, we're shepherds. One of the role of a shepherd is to protect the sheep. If we, by gathering, are putting our communities in danger, that's got problems theologically, ethically, and in terms of public relations. So we're going to need to be really smart about this, no matter what the government is permitting or not permitting. Churches of the future will expand digital impact. In other words, we will not, any church is thinking about returning to the days where they are attendance and no longer online engagement, I think, are a church of the past. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change and or upgrade the church. Part of what's happening in America right now is this: every church in America, every Christian in America is within driving distance to your church now, because they just click a button and they're there. That's kind of a whole new thing. Go to the next slide. So with that, there are 10 things to prepare. Okay. And these are 10 things that every leader in America should be thinking about, whether it's business or church. Number one is preparing yourself. In other words, what do you do to prepare yourself as a leader? Next slide. Second is this: preparing our staff and all of our employees for what's to come. Third is preparing your facility. In other words, our whole facility is going to need to be prepped in a way that is different. And that is not just in terms of cleaning. We'll come back to that. 4 is this: preparing all of your volunteers. Okay. If we have a volunteer that starts hugging people on day one, that volunteer will be driving people away. We're going to have to prepare volunteers and it's almost retrain everybody. Number 5 is preparing your people. Okay. And that is a stage thing with some of these folks. Number 6 is preparing your worship environment. Okay. And that'll be next, the 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be next week. We're talking about how do you set up a worship environment. For example, okay, a room in your church that holds 50, when we reopen, will only hold 7 people. Okay. And they'll be permitted for 7 people, which means what implicates that for a worship environment? Because my prediction is we'll have way more services and way more worship environments, which has got some things to do with technology and on-site. Number 7 is preparing worship options, okay? And number 8 is preparing for maximum impact. In other words, how do we create momentum? And in a couple of weeks, we will give you samples of 7-week grand opening series you can use. Basically, what do you do in 3 massive areas? Number 1 is promotion and communications to the entire community that you are now open and would love to have them there, because some of them are more open now. Number 2 is this: how do you act like a new church? Most churches that get launched do a 4-stage launch, and each stage is designed to double, and each stage is designed to create momentum. How would we basically go, instead of going, okay, our church is gathering, it's a lot healthier to go, how would we look at this in terms of, man, we got a brand new church. let's actually take our church and say you have 500 people in church right now. Look at it as I have a 500-person core group. Now let's launch a church with that as the base instead of the end goal of just getting them back. And then how do you do a 7-week grand opening series? And we'll give you in a couple weeks a whole bunch of options about how to do a grand opening series to build momentum. Here's what happened in our area on this. Several churches in the Sacramento region built buildings. Okay, we studied their move-ins and we realized their move-ins, 50% of the churches in Sacramento that opened up actually went into decline. Okay, some of them, the majority of them, everybody just moved in, but they didn't grow. And then a couple of them actually took off and really grew like crazy. And we realized this: if everybody just comes back week 1, then you have a high attendance because it's grand opening. And so we decided, when we had 4,000 people at the high school, we decided to do a grand opening series, and we put a bunch of things in play. We went from 4,000 to 7,000, and then 7 weeks later, there were more people there than at our first grand opening weekend. And so how do you do a grand reopening series that's designed to build that thing? Number 9 is preparing your ministries for this. I mean, every single ministry, check-in, children, how do you do check-in? How do you do all this kind of stuff? Preparing your ministries. And number 10 is preparing for a whole new future in the Christian church. There are 168 hours in a week, okay? We have been 1 hour a week people. How do we disciple people, engage people, care for people, connect to people? A good question is going to be, how do you maximize the 167, where most of us, like at Bayside, we're probably guilty of spending 90% of our time maximizing hour number 1 on Sunday, as opposed to maximizing the other 167. This has created a whole new opportunity for doing this, okay? And I'm gonna do a rapid fire run on monologue, and then they'll get much better in a minute, because I'm gonna, by the way, that to me is the entire thing. There's no areas you need to be thinking of. It's preparing yourself, staff, facility, volunteers, people, worship environment, worship options for people, preparing for maximum impact, every ministry, you got kids, youth, et cetera, and then preparing for a whole new future. There's 2 bonus questions. Are those on here? Do we leave those on? And it's preparing for financial growth and health. We'll do a whole section on how do you raise resources, because you're going to need some new staff. And number 12 is this. Okay, fresh vision for new ministry in a new age. And that might be actually going, why do we exist and what would we give our lives to build? My favorite phrase out of last week was somebody that said this phrase. They said, marry your mission, date your methods. Too often, the church has married its methods and has been resistant to change anything. This is a shot at saying, what's our mission, purpose? What's our culture, purpose? Now, what methods do we use? Because it's a wide open frontier. Those are 2 bonus questions to this. I'm going to unpack the first 3 and then dive into some guests. So here we go. Question number 1, next slide, is preparing yourself. Okay, and then do you have the stuff underneath that? Okay, there's a shift. And the shift that's the most needed shift in a leader right now in America is this: to shift from being liked to being respected, okay? Most pastors and most leaders spend a lot of time going, I want to make sure I'm liked. I want them to like the sermon. I want them to like this. And the people don't even know they're doing this. Right now, emotionally, there is a shift from, do I like this leader to, can I trust this leader? Because if somebody's liked but not trusted, people are, number one, they are looking for a safe environment. Our whole country, our world has been trained right now to seek safe environments. And the only people that are going to come back are only coming back with leaders they know that they have trusted and thought through, okay? And we're going to unpack this whole preparing yourself thing more in a few minutes with Mark and Lauri. But I also think part of this is going to be this: we're going to need to prepare to be much stronger leaders and far more directive to create the kind of safe environments that will make people feel safe. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. People are going to be seeking safety. Now, we'll come back to this question in a minute. And next week, I'm going to unleash about a half of a seminar on preparing yourself to lead at new levels and to stay in. There's a whole thing about preparing yourself emotionally, being prepared spiritually, being prepared in terms of leadership, that sort of thing. Second slide, go to the next one, is this: preparing your staff. Okay, and can you unleash that whole thing underneath there? Oh, basically, lay out the whole slide. Just go ahead and roll them all up. Okay, preparing your staff. Okay, what behaviors do we need to immediately integrate? Okay, and in other words, when your staff think about like what training is our staff going to need? Are there any staff changes that need to be made? And this is sort of, we've got a new day. There's going to be new seats on the bus, changes in positions and responsibilities. And I put this in bold on purpose, effective church staffs will give up positional responsibility and shift to doing whatever it takes. Okay. John Harris, are you on this?
Yes.
You tell a story about the guy that said, it's not my job.
Yeah. We were doing a conference recently, and somebody was walking by and had a load full of stuff. And as they were walking by, he had kind of asked for some help, and somebody looked at him and said, "That's not my job." And it basically, we say everything that we have and everything that we do is your job.
Yep. And if somebody, right now we have titles, okay? You're the youth pastor, you're the whatever it is, okay? All of our staffs are going to have to let that go in the short run and do whatever it takes. They may be hosting, we may be in 30 services. They may be hosting a service instead of doing youth ministry, or on top of doing youth ministry. In other words, we need to train our staff that, hey, you work for the church first. The whole is more important than the part, okay? And then COVID-19 changes how we work suddenly and dramatically with COVID-19. As we begin to think about returning to the office, we need to focus on how we can plan, communicate, and transition our staff back into the office with new policies and guidelines to create a healthier workspace. We need to determine what we can start doing now to prepare for the transition back to our offices. Go to the next slide. And I'm going to rip through a couple, for example, but for returning to the office, here we go. Ensure that policies and mandates have been followed, okay? And there's guidance from local government. There may be a new certificate of occupancy required depending on where you live. If you are renting, say, there may be some landlord procedures for building reentry. Second is identify essential staff, okay? And I'm not going to read all these because we'll make these available to you, but likely essential staff includes IT, facility management, and production are going to be much, much more important in the short run. Third is this: identify vulnerable staff. This is huge, okay? Star this one on your screen. The decisions and vulnerability need to be based on considerations such as an individual's age, health conditions, lung disease, asthma, heart conditions, diabetes, liver disease. Some of your staff are more vulnerable than other, and that needs to be thought through. Okay, next slide. Okay, changes to consider. Okay, and here's some ways of getting our staff back to work. Phase the staff return to the office. Now, maybe it might be everybody's return at one time. Phase the opening of the facility. Introduce shift work so people aren't in the place at the same time. Accommodate social distancing using the entire facility. It may be our office becomes the entire facility. We create places for people to be that make them feel safe. Create policies for flex space. Which means if there's flex space and people in more than one thing, you're going to need some cleaning policies at the end of one person being there before the other person gets there. Plan and communicate cleaning regimens. It's not enough to plan them and do them. We've got to communicate them, which helps people feel safe. Screen for, this is another one. People are going to come to the office. Anybody wants to come to the office. How do you screen these people for admittance to the office? Okay, next slide. Okay, adjust HVAC to decrease transmission, reduce the need to open doors, utilize outdoor space for meetings, make changes to break rooms and shared kitchens, ensure and this is huge, ensure the supply chain for cleaning supplies is in place because we're going to need those. Most of them don't have enough for our house. We're going to need enough for entire workplaces, reinforce new behaviors through communication, and develop plan and policies if offices closed in the future. Is anybody listening to this and depressed yet? Okay, there is just a lot of stuff, and leaders are going to have to shift to making sure this stuff gets taken care of. And by the way, when the website goes operational, all of these things, we have a ton of information underneath it. You're like, how would I adjust an HVAC? Where would I find supplies? We will give you policies and procedures under each one of these things that you can just pass out to your staff and have people implement. Okay, next slide is preparing your facility. Okay, what areas of the church need to be deep cleaned before anyone returns to campus? Who can be recruited to do that? What ongoing daily, weekly, and monthly cleaning protocols need to be developed and implemented once you are meeting on campus again? Because people are asking two massive questions before they return. How clean is it and how safe is it? And here's a couple keys. Get medical professionals to work with you to help develop best practices related to the health of your guests. We have a guy around, Dr. Totaro. He'll be a key player in helping us figure these policies out. It's going to be smart not to ask another pastor what to do, but get some medical professionals in this. Okay, next slide. Okay. Prior to reopening, cleaning and sanitizing before guests arrive. Now, we'll give you this, but it's deep clean. Pay special attention to preschool and children's areas. Consider removing everything non-essential from the room to limit surfaces. Post signs about not shaking hands and doing non-contact greetings. Invent hashtags like just say hi or whatever it is. Tell your congregations through flyers on the doors, email, social media, how you've prepared the church for your arrival. Be sure to use the words clean, safe, and mindful of health needs and issues, blah, blah, blah. Go to the next slide. Contact mitigation while guests are on campus. Policies, procedures, and processes should be developed to minimize personal contact and to frequently sanitize high-touch surfaces when guests are on campus, okay? What resources need to be purchased and stationed throughout the campus, and where do you find door openers, hand sanitizer, disinfectants, availabilities, how do you gather those? We'll have websites you can go to order those things. What measures could you implement that will mitigate any germ spread while on campuses? Greeters wiping down doorknobs, bathrooms clean, all of this kind of stuff. Next slide. Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad we're done. The back out of that, and here's what I was saying. Never in a million years. Matter of fact, I'm assuming I'm watching Angie yawn. Never in a million years did I ever think I'd be doing anything as boring as helping a part of a seminar being cleaning the children's ministry area. But all of a sudden, this stuff has become massive. And what's going on is this, all of us that are leading anything are having to pay more attention to the environment we're leading it in and the behaviors of our staff and the behaviors of every volunteer, or if it's not safe, people won't do it. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to do 90% of the thinking for you. And so you don't have to go dig around and find this stuff. But if you get an idea from somebody you're listening to, you can put it in one of these categories, implement it. The other thing I'd say is this, some of you around here are pastoring a church of 200, and it's the same thing there. Some of you are pastoring a church of 20,000. John, I think you're on. We have a president of an entire denomination. One of the things I'd recommend is get this whole list, literally developed an email of every single overdone detail, just like I covered with you, and send it to your entire church. They will open it. They will read these 10 areas, and their confidence level that you're on top of this and you care about the safety will go astronomical. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Sorry about the run-on boring monologue, but to me, I'm afraid what's going to happen is people are going to stay home or go somewhere else that's safe just because we dropped the ball on some of this kind of stuff. So to me, that's about as uninspiring as a topic we could ever cover, but I hope we get through that stuff. And so first of all, Mark and Lauri, we're really glad you're on. Okay. And
thank you.
Lauri, would you just give your background real quick, okay? And tell them the scope of what you do is nationwide.
Yeah, thank you. I'm obviously here, part of the Bayside family here in Northern California. And John Harris, who spoke earlier, he's one of the pastors at Bayside, and we're married. And so I've been involved with Bayside ministry for past 15 years as a volunteer. I work full-time in the youth sports kind of area, and specifically in the area of cheerleading. So I help oversee cheerleading across the United States, competitions, training, camps, clinics, all those, everything you've seen on ESPN, that's kind of the area that I work in. And I've recently transitioned the last 3 years to the NGB, the national governing body of cheerleading. And so I oversee kind of all of our safety initiatives, our Team USA, and overall the growth of cheerleading across the United States. So I've been able to do that. I'm also a member of a board for Heart, which is a nonprofit that works over in Africa. And that's another huge area of interest of mine and my volunteerism in that industry.
Yep, very cool. And by the way, Lauri, you spearheaded, or you have been spearheading the effort to make cheerleading an Olympic sport. So you've been working with the Olympics. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so we have two initiatives. We're trying to get one of our sport models of cheerleading as an NCAA emerging sport. We should be hearing that in the next few weeks. So we're excited about that. We've been working on that for 10 years. And then at the same time, we have over 130 countries that we work with that do some version of cheerleading, and we have a world championship in the spring, which was canceled. And so we are currently working with the USOPC. So I have been back to Colorado Springs a few times and working with what that would look like in potentially having some version of cheer represented internationally at the Olympics. So potentially something in LA 2028, but it's a long road, but we're something that we love being a part of and being part of that national governing body group.
Very cool. And I've usually told people you're the smartest leader I know. So as you've been thinking we're reopening, but you're thinking we're reopening nationally, okay? And you have events and all this kind of stuff. What are you thinking? What categories are you thinking? What are you doing to prepare?
So a couple things that we've been seeing across all the youth sports. That's really the groups that I'm working with, is all youth sport initiative type groups. All the other governing bodies, whether it's soccer, basketball, football, lacrosse, they're all thinking the same things right now. The number one thing is they're all doing exactly what you're doing right now. I literally got off a call this morning and I have another call on Friday, and they're literally setting up reopening procedures. I think that that's a great sign. Everyone is seeing those signs of some reopening, but then at the same time, I think what people are realizing is even with reopening, it's not going to reopen as we were. And so the biggest thing is definitely planning ahead and having those plans be as nimble as possible and fluid. So having those resources that are compiled in a place that's easily identifiable for whatever group that you're trying to, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, whatever kind of resources that you need for your type of organization, it's key that you have those readily available in a step-by-step format and things that people can really grasp onto. One thing that we're also really hearing and seeing a lot, I got off a call this morning from the Aspen Institute, and they work with Project Play, which is a youth sport initiative group. And as much as the youth want to get back out and play, there is still a lot of re-entry into youth sports, into youth activity, into camp-like settings that need to be thought about. A lot of them have had little to no activity. So there's that reintroduction of just, you can't start practices just like you used to. Their bodies aren't ready for that. Their minds aren't ready for that. So as coaches and leaders are having to rethink what maybe that reentry looks like and what can you do to prepare them ahead of time for that. In addition, we're seeing a lot of parents that not everybody, and even youth, not every youth and every parent is actually excited about reopening. So that is one thing as leaders of whatever, whether it's a church or a business or youth, you have to understand everybody's viewpoint is not all the same. And so there is a lot of fear and a lot of concern. And so as you start to go through all the different measures of whatever event, whatever it's a church service, a summer camp, whether it's a conference where somebody has to fly from out of the area to, all these different things need to be thought in your strategy as far as what it is that you're trying to do, and more importantly, what steps can you take to ensure not just making sure that things are clean, but people feel mentally and spiritually, like mentally safe going into those activities and environments.
Yeah, Lauri, if what are things you're in touch with? So many parents, so many. I mean, you're all around the country. If you were to say to pastors, here's 2 things you might not have thought of or might not be aware of, or 2 things that pastors should be more concerned about than they might be if they were in touch with their people closer, what would those be?
I think that I'm a big, like, you know, have your one plan, but I would go through as much as you can ahead of time, all of your contingency plans. What is, you know, expect the, you know, hope for the best, but expect the worst. If you're in an area and you have and you don't really have a lot of cases and things are generally well, what happens when you do have a case? What happens when someone is infected from one of your events? What happens when someone potentially, there's a death that relates from one of your activities? It gets traced back to your particular area. Those are the things that we all need to be prepared for, because no matter what happens when we are reopening, and that's what everybody's talking about in the groups that I'm listening in on, is the cases are going to rise. Everyone's aware of that. And so more importantly is making sure that you have your media and you have basically your crisis team ready to go ahead of time, and you're thinking through the worst case, so that way you're not caught off guard. I think the biggest thing that I would say that a lot of already coaches and gym owners, and whether it's parents, people are kind of like, everyone's super anxious, and then they're realizing we need A, B, C, D, and they can't get A, B, C, D to even properly open. You know, if you're going to do communion, don't do communion, or you are going to do it. And how are you going to do it? Do you serve coffee? Do you not serve coffee? I mean, there's so many different things to think about. And if all of a sudden it was really like you could have church on Sunday, or you could open your business tomorrow, are you actually ready for that? Because what you don't want to do is open yourself up for people feeling uncomfortable. And so as much as you can do the extra work on the front end is what we're hearing, and what we're encouraging is that make all those plans, be on the conservative side, and then also make sure you're very nimble, knowing that it's probably going to change week to week.
Okay. And Lauri, because you're a major leader in a nationwide organization, but you've also been in the church for, decades. And you're married to a pastor. What's the stupidest thing a pastor could do in the next 2 weeks? The dumbest.
Personally, I think is to disregard what the local regulations are. I think or basically take maybe what the majority of your congregation may or may not be feeling, and eliminate the maybe outliers, or the group that we feel like the majority is like ready to get back and ready to open or ready to do stuff, but realizing there is a very large group out there that is still very scared, very concerned. And I think that realizing, I know a lot of the volunteers, for example, at churches tend to be the elderly people. So what are you going to do about when half of your volunteer staff are the elderly and the most vulnerable? How are you taking care of them? And just the worst thing you want to do is to not take it seriously and not prepare. Those would be my 2 biggest things that a pastor should definitely, I'm an optimist, but you have to be a pessimist as you're looking at this, and think through all the worst case scenarios and then back it up from there.
It's an old phrase, and a pessimist is an optimist with experience. And so, I think if you're saying to everybody, look, those of you that are faith, we're going to trust God, reopen and throw the doors open and pack it, which some pastors are doing, that is non-discerning and non-wise, and could lead to some people actually dying. So that's good.
Yep. I agree. I think that hopefully, my personal opinion aside, I'm ready to get out there, and, I know that so many are, but I am on literally, I've been on 4 calls this week already, and to hear the other side and the concern and also the legal ramifications of, and with schools, there's just a lot of decisions that are going into everything. And so it's always better to be a little bit, just to err on the side of caution.
Yep, that's good. Lauri, thank you. We may be bouncing back to you. Mark Clark, welcome. Glad you're here, man. So,
thank you, sir.
Hey, first of all, Mark, give everybody your bio. For folks on here that may not know you, a bunch of people already do, but you're pastoring a very exciting church, man.
Yeah, Vancouver, Canada. Started in 2010, called Village Church. And so started with 16 of us in my house, and now it's a bunch of sites and video and all that stuff. So it's good. Canada's an interesting place to be preaching the Bible right now. So
yeah, it's sort of like California with nicer people.
Yeah.
So Mark, you're shut down. So my first question is, what have you learned since you shut down?
Well, we learned that people, one of the barriers for people coming to your church is just getting in the car and driving. And so all of a sudden, you have this group of people, if 200 people came to your church, before all this, now there might be 1,000 people that are, on their devices watching you, or whatever your multiplication looks like. And so it's a matter of moving, as you talked about, Ray, from, online attendance to engagement. How do you actually take people from interest to engagement? How do you make them, how do you become part of your tribe? How do you stick them? How do you move them from the front door into the kind of the living room in regard to intimacy in your church? That's one of the challenges that we're facing right now. Because we have people from 100, I got a report just before this call, 127 countries that are watching our services every week. And so it's like, what the heck do you do with that? We just went from 6 physical locations to a global audience overnight. And so what we're trying to do is act more like a national movement online than a local church. And so we've taken the philosophy of being 6 physical locations and said, we're one location. That location is online. And what does it look like for a person to walk through the door, get the right information, move them to the next steps very clearly, get their information so we can communicate with them, and then be innovative to give them the kind of community and content that they need. So one of the things we're doing is we recast community groups to be geographical. So if you're in Halifax and there's 12 of you, not that any of you know where Halifax is, and there's 12 of you who are watching our services, we're going to gather you in community groups with those people. Then if you're in New York City, and if you're in, Winnipeg, whatever, we're going to gather you in regard to the geography of where you're doing. And then we reformed a bunch of the content to make community group content world-class, because now we've been able to repurpose our staff. And so it's like, we have these lead pastors who aren't leading their sites anymore, but they're good teachers. So instead of just doing community group stuff that we were already doing, let's reform it and make it 10 times better than it was, because you have a new format, you have a new medium. People are gathering on Zoom. So instead of just saying, for instance, hey, Pastor Mark said this on Sunday, show a clip of me saying it, and then come out of the curriculum and start. So anyway, we're trying to figure out ways to reinvent, because to be honest, Ray, I don't see Canada letting us go back to gathering in groups of 200 or more. I'm thinking for at least a year.
That's interesting. So you had an interesting phrase there. What most people, you said, what's your campus? They would say, it's the mothership, it's Granite Bay, or it's Midtown, it's whatever. You're going, what's the mothership campus now? It's the online campus.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we got. So
it should be a shift in thinking, which does open the whole world. So
yeah, and we're trying to figure out what that, like, instead of just people watching, great, they came in for, we know we get data, but we don't know how long people, and you can see when people stay and leave services and whatever, but how do you actually turn that into a church? So we actually hired a church planting director about 3 weeks before this all hit. And he's not discouraged, because we had about 4 churches that we were looking on planting across Canada. So Winnipeg, Toronto, and Halifax. But now he's jacked because he's getting data from everywhere. And he's going, when we come out of this thing, forget 4 church plants, let's have 23, because we've got the data of where these people are gathering. And so let's take the next year, and we've built a whole system to be able to train up potential lead pastors of these campuses and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, and then we're trying to be innovative by teaching online. So for instance, we created this Tuesday Night Live thing. And so we said, okay, online every Tuesday, you're going to have content, 7 p.m. You can ask questions. And so I just got through 4 weeks of Romans. So believe it or not, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to preach sermons because I'm sick of sermons. Sermons are the bane of my existence. I am going to just teach the Bible to you in a deep, heavy, I don't even care if you all leave, because I won't know anyway, because I'm online staring at a camera. And so 1,200 people gathered online for 4 weeks in a row to watch me go through Romans for 2 hours. And so it's literally people wanting content and making sure you're discipling them even online. We couldn't have gathered 1,200 people to sit in a Romans class in a physical location if we dreamed of it. It wouldn't have happened. So anyway, we're going to try to pivot with baptisms too. I think we're going to offer baptisms in the next 3 weeks, and we're going to get people to film them in their houses and then create a whole service where we watch all these people get baptized from people, filming them in their bathtubs and stuff. So I don't know how ecclesiologically legit that is, but we'll figure it out.
COVID creates some new theology. What do you, is there, other than going, hey, I could teach on Tuesday and people show up in the same number. We discovered the same thing, by the way. We do a prayer meeting every Wednesday night at 7:00. When we did a prayer meeting at our physical campus, you'd have like 13 of the faithful show up. Okay.
Yeah.
Last week there were almost 900 people on it. And then over the week, it goes over 10,000. I mean, at a prayer meeting, for some reason, the walls we met in turned out to be the walls that were keeping everybody away. And it's just a whole new day. I have a last question for you. What are you doing to stay encouraged?
I'm trying to chat with people like groups like this, both to learn and remind myself of like, okay, this is still happening. And then I'm starting to think about, what is seeing life change. We tell stories as a staff, right? So let's get together, staff meeting, 9:00 Wednesdays. Who accepted Christ this week? What did that look like? Tell us that story about the atheist on the phone that, started attending Village 3 weeks before this hit and now accepted Christ with you on the phone. And let's share that story with people. So it's about, when I hear those stories, I'm reminded when I'm sitting in my, home office here in Zoom meetings all day, make me want to jump out the window. It's those stories that make me go, okay, let's keep moving forward. And then it's me prepare, like your first point about preparing yourself.
Yep.
I think part of that is even from a content perspective. What I'm seeing is people right now are asking massive questions about identity and meaning. And so if our content is going to be anything coming out of this, you're talking about series and stuff, I think it's got to hover around those issues. People are saying, who am I? What's my destiny? Where did I come from? What am I built and designed for? Purpose and mission. What's the meaning of all this? So trying to speak into that and then hearing life change out of that is the stuff that's encouraging me. So.
Yep, that's cool. And I've got 2 major announcements to make, but I want a real practical question. Kurt and Andrew, before we dive off this, and folks, this will be John Valinsky. Are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. All of the content, slides, materials, we're developing a website You want to talk about that and when that's operational for folks?
Yes, so thriveconference.org is the location. Currently, there's a tab called Resources. Everything is there, but we have a COVID-19 page that may even be up already, or certainly will be up in the next 24 hours. All this will be on there. You'll be able to watch this webinar, share it with folks, and the slides, everything that's been created. Our past few weeks, we've done some incredible webinars on communicating online with Renee Schleffer, and others. So make sure you jump on and check that stuff out.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have an interactive, you can click on it and get resources, things like that thing operational with all of this stuff. Andrew and Kurt, or I think it's just Kurt. Kurt, we've been trying to advance think at Granite Bay about if we relaunch, we stage it, but we give people a ton of options. Those of you who are on this thing, you may want to get some of these down.
Yeah, well, I was going to say some stuff, but after hearing Mark Clark, I'm going to do virtual baptisms and Romans on Tuesday night is my current plan.
There you go.
So, you know, it's interesting between what Mark said and what Lauri said, there's a lot of wisdom in there. And I do really appreciate Lauri's perspective. You know, it's funny because the balance is you got to be prepared for the year. And boy, if everything starts opening up next week and we're not prepared, that's not going to be good. So the way we're thinking about this is we're putting in a contingency plan to test all the tech out for drive up services. So we want to, if that opportunity opens up, we want to be ready for a drive up service. So we're doing right now the testing on that. The second wave of that we're looking at is going, okay, we can't meet as a large group church, but we can get several of our small groups together. If that level opens up to us, we're going to actually, through high contact with our hosts right now, get them to bond with other hosts. And let's say we do a 2 or 3 small group size watch service that way. And we've done this actually in our youth department for many years, kind of a mega small group of 4 or 5 of our youth small groups in a home. That turns out to be very dynamic. So if that level is open up to us, we're going to do that. Another idea we're doing is broadcasting one of our services. So for Granite Bay, we do 5 services a weekend, plus we're doing on demand now. We're thinking about taking our last service, 7 p.m., and broadcasting it live to make the psychological transition from everyone knows we're kind of putting these services in the can to know this is a live dynamic. We're interacting with the feed and the comments to start preparing people to think, hey, no, this is happening live. We have a live church. It's not just a virtual church. And then our last solution is we're going to take Ray and Andrew and I, and we're going to run 350 services of 15 people starting Monday and ending on Monday, just nonstop. We'll step off the stage, put an IV in, get hydrated, go back in there and preach to another 15 people, something like that.
That's exactly right. And we have already been putting a plan in place to test drive-through options. We talked yesterday about going, you got Bayside online, you got Bayside in a small group, you have Bayside drive-in church, you have Bayside drive-in and come-in church, or you have Bayside Chapel, which is a bunch of little tiny sites where there's far less people. And we just think if we can give people a menu of options, then, because here's the deal, you got early adopters, mid adopters, and late adopters, okay? Early adopters, they're dying to meet right now. Every teenager is one of them, okay? Then you got mid adopters. We want all of those folks to actually be able to gather. We are testing, and we'll let you know matter of fact, next week, we're going to try to give you a menu of options your church can use to reopen slowly and carefully when you have permission. But one of the options is if it's a drive-through option, that is pretty easy to test. You don't need to do a service because the only thing that really has to work is the stage has to not fall down, and worship people need to be able to sing, and people need to be able to hear it and see it in their cars. Well, we're going to test that with like 3 people in cars in different spots in the parking lot, and just simple thing, and it's FM radio or our app or FaceTime. There's different ways of doing that stuff now to give people options. Part of this, we have a bunch of early adopters right now that if we reopen this week, they would bust the doors down to go. Or if any other church reopened, they would leave our church and bust the doors down to go into that church, which we would prefer that not happening. And we would hope you would prefer the same thing for your church not happening. So we're basically going, how do we stay ahead of this so that we keep these things as options, okay? And Mark Clark, before we go, I'm gonna have you pray for everybody, but I have an idea and two things. This is sort of the idea of the week you may wanna try. This week in our message, I'm gonna introduce the message and then Kurt and everybody else preaches. We are going to tell everybody on the church, we are going to do an all church phone call. Like all of us, one massive deal. I mean, we have over 100,000 people diving into our services online. We have way more people online than we ever had in church. We're gonna try to get those people to call us too. And Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, we are inviting everybody for a massive phone call. We will put a ton of them. Matter of fact, some of you may be able to, the Zoom can hold, I think, 500 people, okay? We will then spill into other things for people to join us, but it will be a live update, from like a 1 minute update from each one of our campuses, highlights of what's going on with ministry, things we're thinking about the future. We will over communicate the plan for how safe we're making everything for their return. We will do some things that we'll tell some stories about some amazing things that God has done already. And the goal of that is to create unity. We want to inspire our people, but we want all of our people to know we are thinking an advanced plan in the future. And then the other thing we're going to do at Wednesday offering, we're going to take our first ever above what you tithe one shot Wednesday night offering to make some compassion things happen around the community. And we actually think this is going to be the single largest phone call in the history of California. And your church can pull off the same thing. Those of you that are in smaller churches, we wish we were you, because we would fit them all on a Zoom call and you can see them and say hi to them as they're coming in, and you can have an after party if you want and let them stay on the call and they can interact and you talk with you. And so that's sort of the idea of the week. We will let you know next week or in a week on how that goes, because that is going to be a fun thing. The second thing I want to say is this. A week ago, we dropped an idea about doing the first ever and largest in history, and it's easy to be first and largest, first ever and largest in history Thrive Conference. And and moving Thrive from being a conference to being a summit. And that we actually we partnered with Brad Lomenick. Brad is unbelievable. He launched and ran Catalyst, and he's launching and running the Thrive Global thing. We've actually turned this into part conference, almost part Live Aid, where we will take a thing. CG Alvarado thinks we are probably going to get somewhere around 1 million people on this thing. We have already connected with Europe. It'll be aware as well. Here are just some of the confirmed speakers, okay? Christine Kane, Rick Warren, Lecrae, Carrie Newhoff, Nikki Gumbel, Jefferson Olsmith, Luis Palau. And by the way, Luis was on a call this morning. That guy's better than ever, okay? Glenn Barrett, Chris Brown, Lisa, however you say that, Nona Jones, Martin Smith, Mark Clark, thank you, Megan Fate Marshman, John Mark Comer, Mark Sayers, Andrew Stanley, Wes Davis. Our own pastors are all on it. We also have a list of people that we have invited that are getting back to us. Sadie Robertson, Bianca Olaf, Bob Goff. Bob's already in, he's a yes. Joe Saxton for King and Country, Carrie and Cody Job, Francis Chan, Cheryl Sandberg, Steph Curry and Harrison Barnes. We have connections to them. Chris Hogan, Michael Todd, Simon Sinek, Patrick Lencioni, Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle, John Maxwell, Rick Warren is a yes already, Condoleezza Rice, TD Jakes, Priscilla Shire, Louis Giglio, Rich Wilkerson Jr., Levi Lusko, Brian Houston, Mark Burnett, and Roma Downey, Sanjay Gupta. And you can pull that off if you want. This is going to be June 15th and 16th, and it'll be part Live Aid, fundraiser for hurting people all around the world. It'll be part, the most encouraging conference. It will be short content bursts from all these folks. We are putting comedians on. Phase 2 of this is we're now going after artists to be on this thing. And so we wanted to say thank you. Some of you last week in the chat stream put on people we should invite. We took that seriously and created an invite list off of this. We have just been shocked to see people are saying yes quicker than we ever thought. And so for us, that has been a really cool thing. And we wanted to get you an update on that. And then lastly on this, I want to tell you something real quick. Our staff meeting is, if I can do is choking up. Our staff meeting is Wednesday mornings at 10 o'clock. And we have about 330 to 340 people on our staff. So they're all on this call. And they're on the call this morning. And I had this agenda. I'd work with John Valinsky, all of this stuff. And I start the staff meeting, and our senior staff hijacks the staff meeting. And our senior staff had gone out. We just had our 25th anniversary, and our senior staff had gone out and found everybody in my background and Bayside's background that has been significant. And a 60-minute staff meeting turned into an over 2-hour staff meeting of just affirmation bombardment to Carol and me. And those of you that know me, I was like, can we just get back to ministry? And it was one of the most meaningful, I was in tears. All 4 of our kids shared, and I was a mess by the end of it. I just want to say to all of you, if I could, old pastor to people, when you sit through something like that, you start realizing some things matter more than other things. And I'm currently the interim executive pastor at Willow Creek. They do and have historically done a ton of stuff better than any church in America has ever done it. Okay. I mean, they have 950,000 square feet of buildings. It's amazing. This incredible place. They have some of the best staff I've ever met in my life. They are debt-free, 1 million square feet of buildings and debt-free. We're not. And they did a ton of stuff right. But they have been in turmoil for years, and countless people are heartbroken because you can do all the ministry stuff right, but there's stuff that's more important than ministry. And I've actually started thinking, here's my question of the week. What am I going to miss when this season's over? Because my daughter's right here. Okay. I would just say this, no church in America is worth sacrificing your family for. A guy said to me one time, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his family? And so I'm praying for you that not only would you know what the right things are and what the highest priority is, but the majority of our time and affection, all that stuff would be given to the stuff that really matters. Because ultimately, I'm no longer going to be at Bayside. I hope that is a long, long time from now. Ultimately, I'm no longer at Bayside. However, I'm still with my family, and so are you. So whatever you do, drop the right balls and don't drop the balls they're glass. They break if you drop. Just make sure you give yourself to the stuff that matters most. And you can tell I'm emotional about this because I just went through a 2-hour affirmation bombardment that I never saw coming and didn't plan. And so we just want to thank you all for being on this call. We love you all. Appreciate you. And Mark Clark, would you close and just pray for everybody on this call?
Yeah.
Thanks
well, Ray, it's an honor to sit under you, man. So I'm glad those people affirm that. You're a leader for such a time as this, brother. So thanks for your personal pouring into me and my family too. So
you're the best. Feelings mutual, by the way.
Lord, we are leaders under your leadership. We are looking for ways to be creative at such a time as this. And we want to be as innocent as doves, but also as shrewd as serpents to reach as many people as possible with the gospel. We know that that's what drives every leader on this call right now, is we want to see people come to know you, and those who do know you to thrive in their lives. And we just pray for wisdom and insight. Holy Spirit, give it to us supernaturally so that we can reach more people than we ever dreamed of in this moment. And you give us a lot of wisdom and ideas around how to reopen when that opportunity comes about, and how to minister to the people who need it right now, both in their kind of tangible temporal needs, but also in their eternal needs, that we would give them the one who will make them thirst no more and hunger no more, and that would drive everything we do. So we sit under you and ask, Holy Spirit, that you would drive it, that as Ray has talked about, we would prepare first ourselves and protect our families. Lord God, we pray that you would protect us from the evil one. You would guard our kids, our marriages, in the name of Christ, that you would keep us from depression and isolation and all the mental stuff that we deal with as leaders. Keep us from discouragement. Let us, as Ray just exemplified, be people who encourage other people and seek out encouragement so that we can drive forward and be hopeful leaders, because that's going to filter down to everybody. So be with us in those things, and thank you for this time together. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.
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 Hey, Lauri Harris, you're still the smartest person I know. Thank you. Mark Clark, you might be the most inspirational. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
and,
brother.
And by the way, John Valinsky, we have two things. We're going to have, this is our first ever Thrive webinar after party. John Valinsky, we've got, at the end of this, Rick Warren called into our staff meeting this morning, and Rick was in rare form, people, and sung a happy anniversary song that we will refuse to let anybody tape and dispense, but that'll wrap up the next section. But John Valinsky, the after party is off to you, buddy.
That's right. So Rick had a video he wanted us to show, and it is a quarantine video. So Erica, let's roll the quarantine video.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Go. Stay at home. It's the safest place. Hand wash off and don't leave a trace. Avoid your mouth. Don't touch your face. Keep your distance. 6 feet space. And elbow cough. Save the human race when you do the quarantine shake. Save the human race when you do the quarantine shake. Save the human race when you do the quarantine shake. Save the human race when you do the quarantine shake. Shake, 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 shake. The quarantine shake. Shake, 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 shake. The quarantine shake.
All right. That's the first time I've seen that. Rick literally sent that to us about 15 minutes before we got on this call. And apparently he's good friends with the director of the CDC, and he wanted to get that out. And so Rick said, hey, share this, get that out there. What we're going to end with here is our good friend Andrew Stanley, who started the conversation with us, has some incredible stand-up. And so we're going to roll this and enjoy your day. Thanks, everyone, for joining this call. Let's go to Andy.
I will apologize if I seem uncomfortable up here. It's not because I'm nervous. It's because I was homeschooled for 10 years, so permanently uncomfortable. Any homeschoolers here? Raise of hands. Oh, we don't woo usually. That's not in the curriculum. We don't do that. That's good for you guys. I always like to ask the homeschoolers to raise their hands because we never got a chance. So got to learn later in life. Homeschool's hard though. It's hard to meet people. Like, I didn't know any girls growing up. I just knew my sister, and she was off limits. So got to go other places for that. And it's, I had to go to church to meet people. It was the only place that I was allowed to meet people. And I can remember being in like my guys' small group, and all of them were like public schools. They would teach me stuff, and we'd be in like middle school, and we'd be going around talking about the different sins we were struggling with and what we were tempted by. And when it was my turn, I would just make stuff up. I'd just be like, yeah, guys, dudes, I've also really been struggling with poor phonography. Yeah, every day, just mastering it. And I'm just like you guys, you know, same struggles. Please invite me to stuff. And one of them would be like, yeah, I've been having inappropriate thoughts about one of my teachers. And I'd just be like, yeah, same. Wait, no, not that. I think, but no, my parents homeschooled me for 10 years, and then they put me in public high school because I guess they stopped loving me. I don't know what I did. That's a hard transition. You know, I think if you grow up in regular school, you learn all the bad stuff gradually. I learned all the bad words on the first day in the same conversation with the lunch lady. And she caught me right up. She fit them all into one sentence. It was beautiful. And we're married now, so it's going great. She's taught me a lot. We eloped. It was in the news. But I had a very sheltered childhood. I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of the shows and movies my friends could watch. We weren't allowed to watch anything where the kids are disrespectful to the parents, which is pretty much all the shows and movies they've ever made. But my dad would let me watch like war movies with him all the time, like no problem. So like I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob, but I saw The Patriot when I was 8. Like it's just like, I don't know where we got this value system. But we weren't allowed to watch anything that had a sex scene in it. That was like the big one, you know. And but sometimes there'd be a movie my dad wanted us to be able to watch that had a scene in it. So we came up with a solution. And he was way ahead of his time. He would get the DVD of the movie. He would put it in his computer. He would rip the movie into his computer. He would put it in editing software. He would cut out the sex scene, edit the movie back together, and put it on my video iPod. It would take him 4 days per movie. And he loved me a lot, and he hated nudity. So now I have all these great movies on my iPod with these really weird cuts in them. And I'm just like, oh, I bet that was a good one. And now I can't help but think that somewhere on my dad's computer, there's a folder. It has all the missing sex scenes from my childhood on it. And that's my resolution for 2020. I'm trying to find that folder. Find out what really happens in Titanic, you know, because I've never been able to figure out why they seem so connected at the end. But my parents are getting older now, you know, and I can tell that my mom is, because whenever she does something for me, she'll go, now you better remember this when it's time to put me in a nursing home. And I don't think I could ever put my mom in a nursing home, you know, it just seems so expensive. And it is, I looked into it. It's not a good market right now. And I think we all have this dilemma of what to do when our parents reach that age. What I've decided I'm going to do when the time comes is just frame her for a crime. Let the taxpayer take care of it. It's a pretty good plan. Yeah. I see some wheels turning out there. You guys are like, that might work. If I'm being honest with myself, it's not just a money thing. I think I'm still legitimately upset with her for homeschooling me. And I don't think that's unfair. I didn't get to go to real school. She doesn't get to go to real nursing home. So it'll be fine.
Awesome. Great job, Andrew, Stanley, and thanks everyone for joining and hanging in there. And we will see you same time next week, 1 p.m. on Wednesday, and we will go on to part 2. God bless you.
Awesome. See you next week, everybody.